Welcome to this morning's webinar, everyone. We are excited to hear about NAV Easy Security with Per Mogensen, and he is the founder of Mergetool.com and the lead developer of NAV Easy Security. And we are going to just do a couple of housekeeping tips today. First of all, I do want to let you know that we do record all of our webinars, and this webinar will be on our website later this afternoon for you to view and share with other coworkers. And secondly, if anyone has any questions, you can type those into the question box, and towards the end of the hour we will have a question response for you and answer any of your questions that you may have. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Per, and he will get started.
Thank you, Angie. Yeah, I want to talk about our NAV Easy Security solution today. It is basically two parts, or there's two solutions in there. There's one about login and permissions, and it's a set of tools that is for the NAV standard security. It will do a lot of simplification. We can do a lot of reporting on what access people have, and especially simplifying assigning security out there. The other part is field level and data security, and that is one of those things where normally you would either have something custom programmed or that you just can't do it in standard NAV. We also do some changes to the code for this part, but it's basically done with a wizard, and it will both add the security, but also in a future upgrade, remove all the code changes. So there's really no additional cost on doing that one. Our installation use wizards. So for both parts, we will actually run a wizard, and in that way, take all the security that currently exists and take that as beginning point, and then you can start use our tool to keep on maintaining it. Our solution is available in all versions of NAV, at least from 2.6 that was released in the mid-90s until the latest version. The login and permissions is the tools for the normal NAV security. And to simplify maintenance, we do a lot of grouping, both of permission sets, but also of companies. So when you have multiple companies in your system and you need to give people access to more of them, but not all of them, it's actually as simple as assignment for a single company in there. We can also deal with expiration date, allowing people to have a temporary permission when somebody else is on vacation, and the system will basically remove it again after the expiration date. Setup of initial security is really the big time-consuming part of security typically. And we have created something, we call it quick security. It's basically turning security the other way around. You'll be denying access to the things you find important. And of course, then you only have to build security or use the existing security for opening up those things. We have already denied access to modify around 400 tables for a normal person, being all the things about posting groups, different payment terms, countries, and all kinds of things like that one. So a general good lockdown of the security to begin with, and then you just deal with the few things that you really want. This also includes objects, by the way. So if you don't want people to get into the chart of account, you just take the pages and reports away showing that, as you will see when I demo this later in here. We also deliver more than 100 new permission sets you can basically just import. That will allow you in a simple way go in, and when you deny access to certain things with quick security, for example, use those ones for giving it back again. Or they will be used for assigning very precise permission for segregation of duties, of course, also. As you need to correct permission sets or build new ones, you will simply be recording. You will go use the application, and underneath we will figure out what was actually needed for security to run that process. The object level permissions is ability to execute reports, execute pages, and things like that one. It's really an integrated part of the solution. And that unlocks the last 10% normally of NAV security. You can limit any objects type. So changing a quote to a sales order normally is only using the same data permissions, but there is a difference in what objects are being used, and in that way you can actually limit certain processes like that also. Being able to document what access people have and what things they can do in the system is also important a lot of times, especially when modifying security. It's important to see if people actually end up gaining more access by doing changes to the system. Everything we do is offline, so you can actually finish all the changes, or you can test it in a test database and import it to your production. And you can actually then publish the permissions. As we publish new permission, we always create restore points. That gives us a way to roll back. So if you have new permissions and it causes all kinds of problems, you can actually just roll back the previous permissions and it gives you some time to work on figuring out what was wrong instead of just going and assigning super to everybody, for example. The other part of our solution is the field level and data security, and it works in parallel with the normal NAV security. So if you don't have access to edit a customer, we can't give you that. But what we can do is we can actually limit if you have more security in NAV, we can make a page read only. So even if you have full access to modify the customer or even a super user, we can make the page read only so you can't change anything. We can also make fields read only, allowing people to maybe change address and phone number information, but not allow them to actually change credit limit, payment terms, or similar on a customer, for example. Actions can also be removed, maybe not allowing people to release a sales order simply by graying out the button. We can also hide all the things on pages in that way. And we can make a very simple page where we basically, from the same sales order everybody else is seeing out in the warehouse, they will see the page only with a little of the information about the customer, a lot about the ship to, and maybe only seeing quantities on the lines and only having the ability to edit the quantity to ship and the shipment and posting date, for example. So in that way, you can really make it a much simpler system for people, simply by also hiding information. The other part of the solution is the ability to filter data, basically allowing you to go in and make a salesperson only see sales orders for their location they work in, maybe even only edit the one that actually is with them assigned as a salesperson. It can be used a lot of places also to limit access for accounting people to almost all GL accounts, except the one showing payroll, for example. All this one is done with the wizard that basically add and remove code in a very simple way, and you'll be able to use this one with anything. But let's take a look at it in here. I will be using 2017, but there's really no difference between what you will be seeing in here and even what our application would be looking or being able to do in the classic environment of NAV. I want to take a look at the login and permissions first and see how we actually maintain logins in here. I have a whole new user, John. He has no access currently to NAV, but I'm going to assign new permissions to him. I'll be assigning a group of permissions instead of a single permission set, allowing me to keep permissions or permission sets focused on a single task, typically in the system, but still allowing a simple assignment for customer service in here, for example. So in that way, I can assign a group with multiple permission sets out there. I can also combine these groups further. So by building the lower level, you basically just add them together, and in that way you get to what people at a higher level can do. As I select this group sales, I also want to select a company that actually is working in. And you can have normally only assignment of a single company, but we can actually create groups of companies. First of all, that means you're not assigning the actual company name. So in a test environment, you can have completely different company names, but you can still use the same assignment by using these groups in here. Another good reason for that is we can actually export and import everything. So being able to use a group or maybe even the production company name, but assigning different companies in a test environment is actually working very easily in here. As I have assigned permission, I can update the login and it will calculate a lot of things. First of all, the 28 combinations I would normally be maintaining, and then something about summary permissions. Out here, I can see that based on all the permissions that John now has been assigned, he can post credit memos in 2 different companies in here. All this is being calculated based on abilities of having access to multiple things at the same time. And that's basically every time you change something, you can set up anything that is interesting for your environment, and it will be shown right away as you update a user down here. We can also assign temporary permission. So if we want John to be the operation manager in my North America company, I can go in and assign that permission, but I can also put in a date it will actually expire out here. So it hasn't expired yet, so when I update, I will see I get more combinations. And I also now have the ability to post credit memos or purchase credit memos. As this one would expire, I would actually have a check mark here and no permission being added when I do the publish. But we also use that manually. So if you wanted to test out some new security, you don't have to delete the old one. You can just mark it with no permission. And if you have to roll back, it's a very simple process in here. When I assigned the extra permissions, I can see in here that in my summary permission, I can really look at the details. Down here is, I can see and now have access to insert and modify in my vendor ledger entry in one company. And we can look backwards and say, where did that actually came from? And based on 2 different groups, I get different permission sets. And those permission sets gives me level of access out here. So the one that allowed me to post credit memos was, of course, the standard permission set about posting purchase documents in here. So in that way, it's quite easy to actually also look backwards and figure out why users got certain permissions. Assignment of security to users is really the day-to-day task. Initially, to get permissions done, you need to create permission sets. And we deliver a large set of permission sets with the application that are very task-focused, and I'll come back to those ones. But I want to show you how you actually record permissions simply by using the application in here. So if I want to go make a permission set that would allow me to edit a customer, I would basically use the application. And I'm using 2017, so there actually is another way of doing it inside 17. But I want to show you the way that can be used with any version of NAV, also including classic version. Basically, it's a SQL profiler. It's a tool that comes with the SQL database, and you can basically listen to everything that happens. It's normally used for performance tuning, but we use the data accumulated simply to calculate what security was necessary for a process. So as I go in, I will open up my list of customers, and back here you'll be able to see it gets pretty busy capturing all the information. I will open up the card, and I will go make a single change in here for actually just change the address on the customer. As I now close this, it saves it in the database, and I have captured all those permissions in here. I'll save this as a trace XML file, and I'll just call this one edit customer. So this file could easily be done against a test database or anything like that one. Now in production, I'll go create a new permission set in here. And I'll simply do that by importing the recording that I created in here. It will summarize the information, and it will actually calculate a lot of performance data that could be nice also. But I'm not really going to use that much. I will just look at the permissions necessary for a process that I did in here. So simply adding an address information on a customer is actually 75 permissions recorded. And it is one of the reasons that doing this manually can get very, very tedious. There's a lot of things that are being read in here. It's all about the fact boxes and information like that in NAV. But I also, of course, modified my customer. I also modified my contacts. And one thing that is very important is that it actually used a lot of objects in the system. Knowing about what objects are being used by a certain process is really useful for limiting access for important information. So let's say we didn't want it to have people see the customer card. I could take away the customer card from a lot of people with our object level security, but I would be giving it back simply by actually recording the permissions in here, because the person will get back the execute if they needed to edit a customer, of course. These 75 permissions, by the way, is only the beginning, because the other important part is that when we install our application, we will scan the actual code in the database. And that means we have actually a lot of relations in here. So when I need to modify a customer, I really need to be able to read all the different relations in here to be able to list them and so on. And all that is being added automatically. It will also be done in the future. So if there's new changes added to your system, redoing the source code analysis will actually add those extra permissions. With recording, it's easy to build or correct errors with permission sets. You basically just use the application. There's still a lot of work and a lot of planning to be done actually. And that's why we ship a lot of new data with our application. Instead of looking inside the application, I will just show them here in a spreadsheet where they are organized by functional areas. So in here, in the sales area, we have created permission sets to modify the master data or view and different levels of modify. Same goes for creating the different documents, posting shipments, posting invoices, posting credit memo, individual permission sets for each task or each function you will post in here. We have done the same for purchase payable. We have done it for finance, allowing to use or post only one type of journal lines, for example, or account types. And we have done it for inventory. It doesn't cover the complete NAV application, but it's easy to follow this principle and extend it if you use more application or you have custom developed functionality. Again, you would just record those permissions, of course, as I just did. We also have permission set for role centers, allowing person to click on all the things in their role center without getting a permission error. But if they wanted to do the task of editing a customer, they of course needed to get another permission set for that. Getting into NAV, we really have two levels. One, a very restrictive one for segregation of duties or very precise and narrow security. Another one that I will show here in a few minutes is quick security, where you basically have a general access to the system and then only open or reduces those permissions out there. But having security broken down to individual tasks now, if you have auditors that want to know what people should be doing or would have a set in that process, or maybe management, you can actually now have permission sets that give one task at a time. And we're all talking about business transactions now that most people would actually understand what would entitle in that one. So having all these X's out here would basically be a group of permission sets in our system, and that would be how you would be assigning it to users. So really simplifying the setup, looking at individual tasks, what job titles should do those, and building a group matching basically that job in your organization. So even with all the things we deliver, there's still some testing, and there would be custom processes you probably would have to create in here. So for go live, or maybe an upgrade, that is another place where security is hard to reuse, you would be needing something that would take less time, because else you have to do everything before you can go live with it. For that, we have created something that we call quick security. It is basically an approach where we will be having a default security that can do a lot, and then you will be denying the things that you don't want people to do. So we have 3 levels of data access: a person that can work in the system, a person that can only read, and kind of an accounting super level. You can do all the things related to the application, but we will still take away the ability to change other users' security, or we could even take away a payroll system for all levels, including the super people down here also. We also have an object access, so we can limit certain objects for people. If we look at it right now, it's over 1,200 permissions on all levels of data access. And if we look at the objects, it's every object in the system right now. All the things related to setup, like the payment terms and so on, for a normal person working in the system will only have read access. All the things related to processing information, they'll have full access. And we have found 400 tables in NAV where you actually don't need full access to be able to work. And all this one will be created out of the box. So if you don't do anything, but just use the quick security for the defaults, you'll be having a pretty good lockdown on the application already. The reason certain tables showed up as read-only was we had them in here in what we call object properties. So the payment terms were read-only. You could go add your own application table, other ISV tables, and make them read-only and so on. But by default, all ISV or customization is considered full access. And in that way, it didn't really matter. It will all be working automatically in there. You can then go in and say, our most important area that we really need to lock down before go live is read-only, or the customer. I want to make that read-only. I also want to be able to control the flow of sales documents. So I'm going to make that read-only also. And now I have reduced 3 tables in here. That means I only have to give access with permission sets to those 3 tables. That will simplify it to a very low level, actually. You can even do these permission sets manually if you wanted to in here. The other thing is we have information in the human resource module of NAV that we really don't want anyone except a few people to be seeing. So I'm going to make them no access. And that means even the super level in here is not going to be able to have access to those tables in here. So even normal accounting people that maybe is using the super level for quick security, they will not be able to access any of the human resource information in there. Again, if you had payroll or things like that, you could access those tables exactly the same way in here. We can also deal with objects in a very similar way. So I'll go in and say my page chart of account. Normal users should really not have access to that one. If I have some that need that, I'll make another permission set for that one in here. Finding all these objects that shows important accounting information, You can use the help about and find a lot of them, but we have the relations. That is what we create when we scan the source code. And it's easy to go filter and figure out for each report in the system what tables are actually being used and what data is being shown in here. So with this one, I could filter on everything showing the GL account, for example, or I can use this function up here that is basically allowing me to filter on a list of tables in banking and GL in here. And it now shows me a list of all the reports that loops on that data. And it will show me all the pages down here, including my chart of account page that is basically showing that important information in here. I can add all these ones to the quick security setup, and I'll make them no access in here. So out of my close to 4,000 objects, there's really only 140 that I really care about in here. And I just removed them from every person in there. So it have now added them back here, and my quick security permission sets will be recalculated when I actually publish. And everything I have done until this point was only inside the Easy Security application. So I now want to go use this function publish, and it will actually push the information out to the normal NAV tables, and in that way enable the security out here. It will do a lot of calculations during this process, and one of the first things it will actually do is recalculate my quick security actually out here. In the meantime, I will log in with a user that is assigned the permission here as quick security. This one is a person that has been assigned the working level of access. So since it's still working on publishing, I should be able to go in to my customers and be able to edit a customer here. I should have no problem about that one. So I can go here and put in some additional address information in here. It worked fine. If I decided that I should really be a new salesperson in here, for example, that is one of those 400 tables that by default is locked down, and I don't have insert rights to that one. It, of course, also includes posting groups and everything else in here. So in this way, I'm really able to lock down security in a simple way because all the setup is already protected. The other thing is, if I go look at the chart of account, and it's still in the last part of publishing down here, I guess, I can still see my chart of account in here. I can drill down to my entries, and I'll be able to see all the things in here. So as soon as it will finish publishing, I will actually be losing the access to the object, not to the data, because I need that for posting, but I will not be able to actually use the objects any longer. And it's now blinking down here. So the publish has finished. You can see now I lost the execute access to the page chart of account. So I can't open up that page any longer. If I go back, I actually don't have access to it any longer. And with 2015 and later, Microsoft actually added a feature that is quite useful. It will remove things a user don't have access to, or it's possible to remove things a user don't have access to. So if I go look at departments now after reconnecting, I don't see chart of account any longer. If I go search for it, I don't find it either in here. It's basically gone from the user now because you don't have access to the objects. So it is quite useful also with the object level security to control what people can see in the department menu. Even if you can't avoid them seeing the data, you can avoid them being able to see it anyway inside the application. So this part is a standard NAV security in here. It do a lot of simplification, and it gives you a lot of reporting capabilities on top of your security also. The other part is all the things you can't do with normal NAV security. When I edited the customer, when I recorded and added the address information, I could change the address, but I could also change the salesperson, the payment terms, or anything like that one, or the credit limit up here. All those things basically is to the level of what NAV security can do. With field level, I can control this one completely in here, including also all the menu items and everything else up here. I want to lock down this first in here. So I will go in and for every user in the system, I will go lock down all the pages showing the customer to read only. I'll be making exceptions for the people that are different, but this setup is in a much simpler way done than the normal one. You don't have to give everything. You can kind of make a default, and then you only have to give exceptions from that. So if I now go look at my list of customers, all my menu items gray out. If I go look at a single customer, every field in here is grayed out. I can't change anything any longer. It's basically all locked down for me now at this point. I want to make it so I can actually do some changes in here. So I'll go select myself. I'm logged in with the user down here. And if I create a record and no field level security code, I'll be allowed to do everything and my page will look normal again. But I want to go create a new one, and I will allow people to modify the address. So I'll call it address in here. I copied the default that is a read only, so that's a good beginning point. And then I can go in and make the setup for each page. Again, we use page 0, and it has been set for view, so it's basically the reason it's read only, showing only the information for me. I can then go in and say the customer cards. I want to leave that editable, and I'll come back and deal with fields. And then I'll also go in and hide the statistics, because if people only had a limited access, they should probably not see a lot of the statistical information. On the customer card, I want to deal with the fields in here and also actions. And again, we can do field 0, a simple assignment of all fields in here, both the one that are on right now, and if you would add a field in the future, would also be covered. I will then go select, add some fields related to name and address, and I will make those fields editable. So on top of my default having every field gray out, I now have 7 fields I can edit. I also want to get rid of some information, because right now there's a lot of things about the balance. And again, if this one is a user with very limited access, we maybe don't want to let them see the balance out here. So I'll go ahead and hide those ones in here. Hiding can also be used a lot for simplifying screens, by the way. So you can hide all the things for a person out in the warehouse. That is really only related to the accounting part of NAV. We can also deal with actions. And again, I want to make a very simple ribbon in here on my customer card. So I go into hide everything. And then I'm going to add back the few things that I maybe want people to have access to. So they can look at ledger entries, ship to addresses, statistics, and the contact up here. And all those ones, I want to make them editable so people can click on them. But you can also make things that are grayed out. So I'll make my ledger entries view so people can only see it, but they can't really click on it. So with these few records I have created in here, I can now assign myself that security, and I will now see my customers look very different when I open the customer card. I can see a few fields being editable in here. I used to have a balance information up here. It's now gone. And my ribbon is really simple. I only have the few things left up here. And even if I click on statistics, I get an error that I'm not allowed to see that page even in here. So even being a super user, I can prevent people from seeing certain screens also in here. So this application gives you an ability to control all the things that normally would require a lot of custom coding to be done. And it basically didn't care if it's for an ISV solution or custom or anything like that one in there. The other part of this application is an ability to control what records you can see in the system. And right now I see customers from many different locations. We can also, with the data security, limit that. And I want to create a new data security code, again, for my customer table. I want to have a limit based on the location, and I want the same to apply on every page in here. So I will go in and find my location field. I want to do a hidden filter. I don't want people to get around it. I don't even want them to see it's actually applied in here. And I'll go out and apply it for the blank or the blue location. I also want to help people a little. Because of all the blocked customers, we really don't want to see them all the time. So I'll actually go in and make an editable filter, something that people can't get rid of, but I want to filter on the first option in here for them to make it simpler. So that's all I need to do for my data security code. All I now have to do is assign it to my users, and I'll do it for myself and everybody else also in here right now. So as I now open up my list of customers, I only see the blank and blue one. And I have this helpful filter up here about the non-blocked customers. I can get rid of that any other filter, but I'm still not getting around my hidden filter for the blank or blue location out here. So in that way, you're still completely locked down by that one, but you can use or remove the editable ones. We can also make this filter depending on the user. So we have something we call a user filter. And that basically allows me to go in and map a user ID to a whole list of filters, one being the location code out here. And again, the blank user will be the default, and I'll map them to the blue location out here. I'll also add myself, and I'll go in and actually map myself to two different locations inside my system, the red and yellow. I can also map myself to a salesperson or to a certain range of GL accounts and things like that one. All this one can be used as filters, different places in the system. So I need to do one change to my data security code I created. So it actually used my dynamic filter in here. And I can go in and instead of having the hard-coded, I want to substitute values in there. And then I will go ahead and look up to what we call dynamic filters. We have things related to date and time, responsibility centers, user filters, and so on in here. And also things about work dates. But I want to use the one about location, the user filter for location, and I can see my value is red or yellow. So it's now a variable. It will be replaced before you actually show the page in here. So if I now go back, look at my list of customers, I'll see the yellow, the blank, and the red ones in here. And in that way, I will be able to make a mapping between users and all the other things. I could also have made it so when I open up a certain page, it would actually only have allowed me to open it if the salesperson was actually matching, for example, only on the card page. Again, another one to do it even more user specific, the data in here. So, well, let me go back here to the presentation because there is, of course, the issue about pricing on this one. The solution is added to your NAV license, so it didn't matter how many users you have. Login and permissions is $2,500. and field level and data security is $2,500. If you get the complete solution, it's $4,500 in here. And in that way, all the features you have seen today and a lot more actually is actually included with this solution in here. And it's all added to your NAV license. We have more than 75,000 users being administered by our solution actually in here, and more than 1,000 customers using it in many countries of the world. You can find a lot more information on our website. There's videos and many other things. Or you can contact Innovia to set up a demonstration also if you have specific details you want to talk about in there. Yeah, but that was basically what I wanted to talk about today here in the demo. I don't know if anybody have any questions or anything like that one.
We do have a couple of questions, Per. Can field level be purchased alone if we already have security set up?
Yep, each part of our solution is independent, so you can use field level security by itself if you actually want to. There's nothing between them that really is necessary, so you can use field level by itself, no problem at all.
Okay, great. And can field level security work on our customized application?
Yeah, one of the important things about this application is we only have new objects. There's no changes to existing code. It also means we don't know what existing code is. So any application that is custom built, ISV, or came from Microsoft is basically the same for our application. That also includes fields added to existing tables or anything. So yes, it works basically on anything, as long as the partner can assist with installing the code changes initially.
Okay, and how long does it take to implement security?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have done with Quick Security, we have implemented and deployed the same day actually. It is, of course, under the assumption that, yeah, you want to use Quick Security and it all works fine for you. Field level, again, can be deployed in hours also. And together, it actually makes a really strong foundation for setting up security if you look on a more higher level. We also have people or companies that need segregation of duties or Sarbanes-Oxley requirements. And it can take months for them to document and get everything ready. But if you really need security now, within a day, you can have something up and running, both using Quick Security and field level and data security. It does require some training before that, but when you go deployed, it can easily be done in a day, and you will get really good security out for that.
Okay, we do have a few more questions. Can we get more detail on how SOD works? When adding new access, is access checked for SOD conflicts? And what is the basis of the SOD? For example, COSO framework.
Yeah, our application is building security, and it's documenting the security, what a user can do. Setting up conflicts and monitoring conflicts, there's other solutions that will be able to handle that much better. We don't know what a conflict is for segregation of duties. It's something that you would have to tell the system. We can actually, if we go look at our setup for the calculations we did for summary permissions, we have summary calculations in here that are giving you kind of positive things. What can a user do? But it is one of the things you can do. You can create your own violations in here. It is better done with other system, I would say, that will generally monitoring it. It's not the intention of these calculations to do SOD monitoring, but it gives you an ability to see what people actually can do in the system. in general, the reason we say our permission sets that we deliver are SOD is if you use them, only one of them, it will not typically break any of the segregation of duty rules you will be adhering to. You can combine them together and in that way break SOD rules. But our application is about building the security and giving you a lot of documentation of what people's abilities are in the system, I would say. That's the main goal with our documentation. It is not anything that will prevent you from modifying a user and giving them something that will break external requirements outside NAV. So no, it's not a SOD verification application, I would say. It's allow you to do security that is segregation of duty compliant, but you have to know what the compliance requirements are.
Okay. And when a new version of NAV comes out, how soon is Easy Security version available, compatible?
Last time we shipped 3 days after Microsoft, and we were actually late. The last 3 versions before that, we shipped the day after Microsoft. So that means you can have our application very shortly after. We plan to be within the first week. That's kind of our goal. We will ship the application within the first week. The data, the permission sets that we deliver, all these SOD permission sets, they're actually working all the way from 2009 to 2017. And we are already in the process of verifying it for the next NAV version. And we will promise we have them ready in 3 months. We will probably be ready with the first set within the first months after Microsoft's release. So that's kind of our goal within the first week with the application, within the first 3 months with the data fully verified and working at that point.
Okay. And what kind of security reports are available for auditors' reviews?
You can do a lot of things that we show. Let's say you want to show what permission sets are given to what users, for example, and things like that one. You can actually, in quite an easy way, simply by changing filters in here, saying I want to know everything about Windows logins in here, and everything in NAV can basically be sent either to a PDF or be printed or to Excel in here. The other thing is, let's say all these summary results out here. Again, those things you can actually find in here also. And I can go in and say, I want to look for everybody in the system. I want to see who can actually print checks, for example, in here. So I want to filter on this capability of printing checks in here. And I want to see who actually have that access in here. So I'll also go ahead and add this access complete must be yes in here. So I now have a list of users that can actually print checks in here. And that is just one of the abilities I have created. In NAV, you can do this about saving as a view in here. And this one is, I can call this one users that can print checks. And what it will now do, it will add it to my row center. And I already had a group, but you will get it in your other row center. And you can basically run this report now by simply clicking on this menu item. And then you can just send it to anything you want after that one. So per se, we don't have reports specifically that will print some fixed content, because it's really up to what the auditors will like to know in here. But you can basically, with this saving of a view, figure it out once, and then after that, print anything you want at that point in here. So in that way, you can document your security quite easily, and you get the added benefit that everything, of course, is on the screen, and you can easily go and say, okay, I want to look at Michael in here instead of going directly for the data. Or for in a report only at paper, you can find a lot of things simply by drilling around in here, by looking at information and so on. So we create the information online on the screen, allow you to filter what you want. And then if you want it as a report, you can just send it to PDF as a report, for example.
Okay. Very informative, Per. Thank you for the presentation. If anyone else has any questions, you're more than welcome to ask those in the question box. I would just like to thank everyone again for attending this webinar. Thank you, Per, for going over NAV Easy Security. And I just want to remind everyone that this webinar is recorded. It will be available on our website later this afternoon. And you're more than welcome to attend any of our future webinars at www.innovia.com. That has all of our latest events and past webinars. So if you want to share any information with colleagues, you're more than welcome to. And we hope to see you on our next webinar, which will be tomorrow with Avalara, and they will be talking about automating tax compliance in Microsoft Dynamics NAV. So if there are no more questions, we will go ahead and wrap up this webinar. Thank you again, Per, for the presentation. It was very informative, and thank you everyone for attending. Have a good day.